to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Kate Henderson, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Wendover High School. Welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Thank you so much.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience where you grew up, where you went to school, your first job, those types of things.
All right. Well, I grew up as a Navy brat. So I've moved all around the world. Like every 2 years, we would take off and move somewhere else. I was born in Japan, and we did several stateside tours, Hawaii, London, and then my dad got stationed up to Florida, and he retired there after 28 years, and that's where I graduated high school. And then we moved back to Logan, where he was from. I started college at Utah State, did that for a few years, took a couple of years off. When we were doing that, my father and I started a restaurant in Logan up by USU. The restaurant transplanted to Ogden. So we moved up to Ogden area to Sunset. And I went back to school at Weber State, and I graduated from Weber. That's about that. Oh, I moved out to Wendover in 1998 and worked in a restaurant out here for a few years. And then an opportunity came open to coach at Wendover High School. So I started coaching as an assistant volleyball coach in 99, I believe, and been doing volleyball pretty much since then. Took a couple years off here and there. And in 2003, I believe, a job opened up at the high school, and I took it. My degree was in physical education with my minor in child and family psychology, which does not prepare you to teach kids in school. But, and I've been teaching at Wendover. It's the only place I've been teaching, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love our kids out here.
Let me ask you a follow-up. So the restaurant business with your dad, you just closed up, or
yeah,
he'd had enough when he retired, and then
he was teaching at the high school at the time before I was, and just small business, it kind of just went under. He was getting really old, and it was hard for him to do that. And then with me shuffling with school and coaching, it was a lot to do. So we just closed it up here in town.
Well, I'm
we sold really good hamburgers. It was a hamburger place. It was very good hamburgers.
That's
and
good.
We had one burger that was, it's called the Jihugis. It was 2.5 pounds of meat. It was huge.
Oh my.
Yeah.
How many people does it feed?
Well, it would feed a full family. We'd obviously have a challenge that if you could finish by yourself, you wouldn't have to pay for it. And I don't know why people would torture themselves to do that, but it was good. Wasn't worth the t-shirt that you got, but
oh, that's amazing. I'm interested to know, since you talked about your dad's time in the Navy, moving so much, did you even have a chance as a young woman? Well, I guess if you were a couple years or so to play in some leagues, some sports leagues, soccer, basketball, that type of thing, or?
I did base softball when I was younger in high school in Florida. So I was a junior, senior at that time, but we did base softball. Actually moving around that much, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I became kind of a recluse. I didn't like making friends, knowing that I was going to leave them in a couple years. And so that's something that I've had to learn how to break out of. And if I'm with a group of friends, I talk a lot. If I'm in a group of people I don't know, I tend to sit back and be a little bit of a wallflower because I'm learning, but it's something I grew up with. So it's a behavior that I'm trying to change. But I wasn't one that would be like, okay, I'm in a new spot, I'm going to go in and try and be the popular kid. I kind of just sat back. So I
Okay.
did do some sports in high school. I made the softball team and the volleyball teams. I ended up choosing not to do those. A big school. I did track and field, and it was in London, and I had a lot of opportunities. I went to an American school in London, and so we would go to Belgium for track meets, and we would go over to Italy
Wow.
for track meets. And so I had a lot of opportunity like that. I got to see more of the world. I was also a band geek, and we had tours every year. We do band tours, and one year we went to Rome for a week, and then we went to Austria the next year that I was there. So that was fun. I also did gymnastics. I did a lot of gymnastics when I was younger.
That is
Oh,
fascinating. So moving around so much, but a road trip track meet for Wendover, it's maybe traveling 3 or 4 hours, but I'm
yeah,
going to Belgium for a track meet. That's incredible.
it was fun. We stayed with host families, and it was a lot of fun. Experiences that most kids don't have.
Yeah. Let's have you talk for a minute about some of the mentors you had in your life, Kate. Parents, teachers, bosses, coaches that really inspired you and made a difference in your life.
Well, obviously my dad, he always told me never settle. Always strive to attain your dreams. When I remember when I was younger, he asked me what I wanted to be, and I like traveling, obviously. And I said, well, I want to be a stewardess. He goes, well, why don't you want to be the pilot? And so I just kind of remember that. Never settle for what's expected of you. Because I mean, I'm a little bit on the older side nowadays. And back then women weren't pilots. They were the flight attendants, stewardesses, I guess we called them back then. I never thought about being a pilot at the time. Well, and I never wanted to, but my dad's reminding me to don't just settle for what people think you can be. Do what you want to be and do it at the best you can be. So if you want to travel the world, be a pilot. Then you can go all over. So also now in this job, I've been in this job for about 2.5 years. Trevor Wilson at Stansbury has been a big help to me and
Sure.
encouraging me to take classes. And I already got my CAA. I got it last year. So in my first year and a half, and I'm working towards the CMAA. But
Good for you.
yeah, I'm excited about it. And then Kathan Bear is now our district AD, and he's been showing me the ropes, and he's there to answer any questions and just help me through and navigate through this job. There's a lot to it. So
Yes,
he's
there
helping me.
is. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Kate.
Okay.
What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
I don't know that there's a failure because you always learn from any mistakes that you made. I would have to say I was a 3-sport coach. So I was coaching all year, basically, except for that 1 week in November to recoup. I didn't know how to do a work-life balance at that time. And so I lived at Wendover High School and enjoyed being with the kids and stuff, but I forgot about my own family a little bit at that time. And so learning how to have that balance between work and home was a very difficult process for me. And some stuff suffered a little bit. I mean, we obviously made it through everything, but that would probably be one of my biggest maybe regrets is not learning that earlier in life.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about the job of AD, and I realize you haven't been one that long,
I
but
have not.
how has it changed? Let's throw out COVID because that was a mess for everybody. How has it changed since you first became an AD?
I think there's a really nasty 9-letter word called liability. I would have to say that's probably one of the biggest changes to policies and procedures in, at least in our district, in our school, is always looking out for the what if this happens? How are we going to cover ourselves so There's no legal issues that are going to happen. So being able to follow those policies and procedures to help combat the fear of court or legal issues, I guess, would be when I was coaching 15 years ago, we didn't have to worry about some of the stuff we worry about now. And as an AD, trying to, especially the older coaches, teach them the importance of it and have them follow the rules that haven't been there before is a challenge.
Let's have you talk about being an AD and being a successful woman AD. And the only reason I asked it is because obviously there's more and more women getting into the profession, but it's still male dominated. And certainly compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, there's certainly many more women, but it still has to be tougher just because of the fact that you are a woman. So talk about that.
I believe the road is still a little bit rockier probably for women than men. But we're getting, like you said, we're getting closer to more of a equity in there. I try to be very confident and knowledgeable and be fair when I'm dealing with other people. And I believe as a woman AD, especially, being able to set and communicate boundaries, because maybe people think I'm a pushover. I don't know. Maybe that's my own issues. But I watch how people interact with male ADs, and then with me, it seems to be a little bit softer. Mm-hmm. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know the correct terminology for it. But so I find that having those boundaries set and as a non-negotiable and just holding my ground to what it is, that it has helped me a lot. We're all in it for the same reason. I mean, I would hope we're all in it for the kids. So gender should not play a role in any of that.
Absolutely. That's well said. Talk about becoming the AD at Wendover, certainly not the biggest school in the state, not even arguably, certainly one of the smallest schools in the state, but talk about following the legend Clayton Carter, who was there for years and years.
30 years. Well, like I said, there's some of it is the new policies and procedures. So coming in and having to make some changes with that, I'm the bad guy, I guess. But Carter definitely knew what he was doing. He made it look a lot easier than it is because he had been doing it for so long. He knew his ups and downs and how to navigate through issues. And that's something I'm learning how to do. And with 2 years in, I mean, it's a never-ending process, I suppose. But Carter taught me a lot. He taught me a lot. And it's tough. The job is hard. The job is hard. I would say it's time-consuming, maybe more so than being difficult. It is a very time-consuming job. I wouldn't say it's a difficult job per se. I mean, you have difficult issues that come up, but on the day-to-day, it is a time-consuming job.
Let's have you talk for a minute about your journey with the UIAAA. How did you find out about it? How did you become involved?
So that goes back to Trevor. He was very, should we say, pushy on me getting involved in it. And so I started taking some classes, and I like taking classes. Something I've always tried to push with my girls or my teams is education is very important. And I had pushed off my going back to school and getting my master's for 20 plus years while I was coaching. I didn't have enough faith that I could manage it with coaching and everything else. But I'm happy to say a couple of years ago, I decided to go back. And I got through my master's program, and it was a 2.5-year program. I got through it in 11 months. And so I have a master's degree now in leadership, educational leadership. So I found out that the fear I was afraid of, I didn't trust myself to do an online class because I'm one to procrastinate and put things off. And I was worried that I couldn't get through that, as well as everything else that I was doing at the time. And now, because I did that, I have the confidence that I don't let fear define any of my limits. So if I'm afraid of something, I just attack it full force and get to the business of it. So I appreciate that. So back to the, sorry, I kind of squirreled a sec. Back to UIAAA. I took the classes and I got my RMA before I got it, within 6 months, I believe, before we went down to our conference for the Utah conference. And then at the conference, I'm like, I think I can do this, the CAA. And I talked to Trevor and I started taking them, and I took the class to pass the test down at the conference last year and got that. So very exciting. Like I said, I'm looking forward to continuing the education part of it. Some of the classes are scary. The law classes are very scary about what can happen if you don't do your job with diligence. But education is so important, and continuing to learn, and me being fresh into this job, it's very, very beneficial for me. I think it'd be beneficial for anybody, but for me, coming in, my Carter's not here. I don't have a regular communication with him. I have questions and he's not here to answer those. So I just make a phone call to Trevor or Katham and try and get those helped out. But does that answer that question?
Absolutely. Let's
I do want to go to the national conference. I just haven't figured out how to make that happen yet, but I do intend on going to the state conference every year, because it's the networking is so important.
And thank you about the networking. That's important for everyone to hear. But you just need to put the screws to Katham. He's the district AD.
I know.
And Trevor's been to that national conference. Obviously, he's been. And you just tell him that that you've got to go, and then that's the deal. And that to find some district money to get you there.
I know. It's all about the money, I think, at this point. But
yeah. Let me expand a little bit. You talked about your certification journey, that you became a CAA, and you are still a fairly new AD, and so you're to be commended for that. Talk about that test, and I realize it is a test, and when people hear the word test, they sometimes freeze up. And talk about how it's inclusive, but it's probably not the worst test you've taken, and that they can do it.
It is definitely not the worst test. I'd say my master's to get my certification was probably one of the hardest ones. But I really appreciated when we went down to the Utah conference, they had a study session for that test. Had I not gone to that study session, I think the test would have been a bit more of a bear to get through. But going to that study session and talking, I think there was about 8 people in my group. So we sat and talked. We sat on a table and we did table talk and went through the test or similar test questions and answering those tests. And then we had conversations about the answers, which really helped not just know the answer, but understand the answer. So I would recommend, if you're going to do the test, do it at the conference where you can take the study session before. It was absolutely so valuable.
Some great advice. Kate, what's one common myth about being an athletic director that you would like to debunk to the general public?
It's not about going to games and writing schedules. That's part of it. But with the athletics portion of the school, it's the biggest conglomerate of people in the school setting is within the athletics programs, where you got kids and parents and coaches and all the spectators. It's a huge group of people that you're basically in charge of. Make sure everybody's safe and making sure that we have fair play and referees and everything. There is so much more to the job than just going and watching games or in setting up schedules. It is a full-time position.
What's the favorite part of your job, Kate?
That's an easy question. It's the kids. It's the kids. I backed out of coaching when I took the AD job because I knew it was going to be a time-consuming thing, especially learning while I'm doing it. And then this last year, the opportunity came up for volleyball. And unfortunately, we didn't get anybody to fill the position. But I am very pleased that I get to go back and work directly with the kids in volleyball. Now, successfully, I mean, we've improved a lot. Don't look at our record. But it's been just I miss working with the kids like that.
Sure. Let's finish up with a couple of points that I always finish up with. The first one being this. I need 2 suggestions from you, Kate, for a brand new athletic director to be successful. They need to follow Kate's suggestions to achieve that success. So what would your 2 suggestions be?
I've kind of already hit on them, but I'll say them again.
Okay.
Communication with other ADs, networking, huge. And then number 2, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to tell somebody you don't know, but you'll find out.
That is well said. And that's sage advice. Thanks for sharing that. We'll finish with this, Kate. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Maybe why I went from being a 15-year special ed teacher into being an AD.
Then let me ask you simply, why did you decide to leave coaching and take on that AD role?
Because I don't ever want to settle. And not that I was settling for coaching, but I always want to try and push myself to do, like I said before, do things that may seem fearful and afraid, and learning new things. And obviously to help the kids. To help the kids would be the number one reason. But I love being at Wendover High School. I love my job. I actually moved in to be the PE health teacher when I took the AD job. So I'm now out of special ed, which I miss. But AD has similar things with the law and stuff with special ed as well. So it's not easier. I can tell you that. Neither job is easy, special ed or AD. But I would say I moved into it to not just further myself, but maybe impart some knowledge and some ideas to help move Wendover High School up in learning and what's the word? I don't know what the word is. Being better.
There you go. That is some great insight. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Kate Henderson, Certified Athletic Administrator and the Director of Athletics at Wendover High School. Kate, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.